Sometimes a man reaches a moment so fragile and defining that everything in his life tilts in a new direction. For Ren Doyle, that moment arrived on a frozen November afternoon as he drove his battered pickup into the northern wilderness, carrying nothing but a loyal dog and the quiet ache of a man who'd lost too much. His marriage had unraveled without a dramatic fight, just slow distance and tired silence. His business collapsed under weather, debt, and pressure he couldn't outrun. And the bond with his son had thinned to awkward, apologetic phone calls. The cabin he bought for $4,000 was supposed to be a last refuge, the place he'd hide from the world until he figured out how to breathe again. But when he unlocked the weather-worn door, the last thing he expected was a young pregnant woman standing in the shadows, barefoot, scared, exhausted, but holding herself upright with a stubborn strength that froze Ren where he stood. Her name was Marley. Her eyes told him everything her voice couldn't. She was running, and she had nowhere left to go. Ren should have told her to leave, but instead, with a softness he didn't understand, he whispered, "Stay, just for tonight." And in that moment, two broken paths quietly collided. Marley wasn't fragile, she was a survivor. Over the next days, she moved through the cabin with quiet precision, tidying shelves, tending the fire, preparing meals with the few supplies she had gathered in secret. Ren watched her carefully, unsure where the boundaries were, unsure why he felt such a protective pull towards someone he had just met. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. Marley had fled a violent marriage, escaping a husband who hid cruelty behind charm and influence. She had left before but always been found, dragged back into a life laced with fear. This time she ran farther into the cold wilderness, hoping distance might finally protect her unborn child. Ren didn't try to counsel her or pretend to know her pain. But he showed up, fixing the leaky windows, repairing the broken door, fetching wood so she wouldn't exhaust herself. Winter pressed in around them, and with each passing day, the silence between them softened. Marley began trusting Ren with small revelations, memories, fears, the way she slept lightly because nightmares still knew her name. Ren responded with calm steadiness, his quiet presence slowly becoming the first safe place she'd had in years. As snowfall thickened around the cabin, life settled into a rhythm neither expected. Ren woke early to cut firewood, his breath fogging in the icy air while Ash trotted behind him, tail wagging. Inside, Marley folded clothes for the baby she would soon meet, stitching tiny socks and repairing blankets with careful hands. Evenings were spent in flickering firelight, exchanging pieces of their pasts. Ren spoke of his son and how he'd failed to be the father he wanted to be. Marley spoke of a home that looked perfect from the outside, but was filled with threats and bruises hidden beneath long sleeves. The more she told him, the deeper Ren's protective instincts rooted themselves, not out of pity, but out of recognition. They were both navigating the ruins of old lives, both trying to find footing in a world that felt colder than the winter pressing in. One night, when a sudden noise outside sent Marley into panic, Ren stepped out with a lantern and a steadiness she clung to. They were building something fragile, not romance, not dependency, but a connection born from survival and quiet understanding. That fragile piece shattered the morning Marley received a single text, "I know you're in the north." Her phone slipped from her hands as terror overtook her. Ren felt something inside him ignite, a fierce, steady determination. He immediately began fortifying the cabin, stringing fishing line alarms between trees, reinforcing the door, clearing brush to create visibility. Marley tried to hide her guilt, insisting she had brought danger to his doorstep. But Wren silenced her with a gentle truth. "You're not alone in this, not anymore." The next days were heavy with tension. Marley flinched at every sound. Wren barely slept, keeping watch while the wind howled outside. Snowstorms isolated them further, but the fear within the cabin grew thicker than the winter air. Wren wasn't running this time, not from danger, not from responsibility, not from the chance to do something right. And Marley, though shaken, found herself holding onto his steadiness like a lifeline she'd never had before. When a silver SUV finally appeared on the snowy path, Wren grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch with a determination that could split stone. But the woman who emerged wasn't the threat they feared. Geneva Sutherland, private investigator. She carried documents, photographs, and news that nearly dropped Marley to her knees. Her husband, Dalen Reese, was dead, killed in an icy crash weeks earlier. The monster who haunted he. Her dreams no longer drew breath. But Geneva had more. Marley's wealthy uncle in Vermont had been searching for her for years. She wasn't abandoned. She wasn't forgotten. Her husband had intercepted letters and blocked calls. Her family wanted her home, wanted to help her raise her child in safety. The truth overwhelmed Marley, leaving her trembling between grief, disbelief, and unexpected hope. Wren watched from the corner, realizing with a quiet ache that perhaps Marley had a place she truly belonged. And maybe he was only meant to be a chapter in her story, not the ending. But when night returned and Geneva drove away, the cabin filled with silence heavy enough to swallow them both. Marley sat by the fire, eyes red from crying, the weight of choices pressing down like winter itself. Wren sat beside her, unsure how to speak the truth that gnawed at him. She finally broke the silence. "What do I do now?" Wren swallowed, fighting the fear that he already knew the answer. "You choose the life that keeps you and your baby safe," he said softly, even though those words cut deep. Marley nodded, but tears slid down her cheeks. She didn't just fear the unknown. She feared losing the first place and the first person who had made her feel safe without control or conditions. Wren stayed by her side until she fell asleep against his shoulder, unaware that he was staring into the fire, wondering why letting her go felt like losing another piece of himself. Marley's decision had to wait, because life demanded their strength sooner than expected. Her water broke in the middle of a fierce winter storm that swallowed every road. Panic flashed across her face, but Wren took charge with urgent steadiness, guiding her through the steps she'd taught him. Labor consumed the cabin, waves of pain, shaking limbs, tears caught between fear and determination. Wren stayed by her side, holding her through every contraction, whispering encouragement he didn't even realize he had in him. When complications arose, he refused to lose control. He shifted her into position, followed her instructions, prayed beneath breath. Hours blurred, sweat and tears mixing with desperation. And at dawn, Neve entered the world, tiny, crying, impossibly strong. Wren delivered her with trembling hands, then placed the newborn on Marley's chest as she sobbed with relief. Outside, the storm quieted. Inside, a new life breathed her first breath, and everything changed. The days that followed were gentle, healing, and fragile. Marley recovered slowly, teaching Wren how to care for Neve, how to hold her, feed her, soothe her tiny cries. Wren moved with new purpose, rising before dawn, checking the fire, keeping the cabin warm enough for the newborn. When Neve wrapped her tiny fingers around his thumb for the first time, Wren felt something bloom inside him. Marley watched the bond forming and finally understood what her heart had been whispering. She didn't want to face the future without him. Vermont offered safety, family, medical support, everything she wanted for her daughter. but she also wanted Ren beside them. One evening, she placed Neve gently into his arms and whispered, "Come with us, not because you feel obligated, but because you belong with us." Ren looked at the baby, then at Marley, and felt the undeniable truth settle inside him. He wanted this life. Preparations began quietly. A doctor sent by Marley's uncle arrived on snowmobile to check them both. Supplies came. Arrangements were made. But leaving the cabin felt like tearing up roots neither expected to grow. Ren walked the land one last time, memorizing every tree, every tool he'd repaired, every step where life had started to feel possible again. Before they left, he made a silent decision. He went into town and added Marley's name to the cabin's deed, half the home hers forever. When he showed her the document, tears spilled down her cheeks. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. Ren smiled softly. "Because this place saved both of us, and it belongs to you too." They packed together, storing memories with every folded blanket, every small item placed carefully in the truck. The cabin wasn't something they were abandoning. It was a home they would return to. At dawn, they drove south toward Vermont. Ren at the wheel, Marley beside him, Neve sleeping in her mother's arms, ash curled at their feet. The snowy wilderness stretched behind them, but for once, Ren didn't feel like a man running from failure. He felt like a man moving toward a life he was finally choosing. Marley reached over and took his hand. "Whatever comes next," she whispered, "we face it together." Ren squeezed her fingers gently, warmth settling deep in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt whole. A family waited ahead, new chances, new healing, new hope. The road shimmered under morning light as they drove forward, carrying the kind of love rebuilt from survival and courage. If this story touched you, tap the like button. Leave a comment and subscribe for more powerful journeys like this. And tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it where you are?